Welcome to the second day of the Long Weekend of Literatures 2021. Yesterday, we heard some prolific European and Indian authors talk about their work. We promise you that we have equally exciting Chai Pakoda Addas, panel discussions, and audience interaction rounds lined up for the second day of the festival. I'm Lasya, Partnerships and Community Manager at Belong. Welcome to the track one of Long Weekend of Literatures 2021, which is brought to you by Alliance Française de Delhi, the French Institute in India, Instituto Cervantes, AECID Embassy of Spain, Goethe Institute Max Miller Bhavan, Italian Embassy Cultural Center, Embassy of Switzerland, Swiss Arts Council Pro Helvetia, Austrian Cultural Forum, Embassy of Austria, Embassy of Ireland, Camo Portuguese Embassy Cultural Center, Polish Institute New Delhi, Lis Institute Hungarian Cultural Center, and the Embassy of Denmark and Munich. And this is being presented and organized by Belong. As you know, the festival has two tracks. We are currently on track one. And in case you want to join the sessions on track two, you will have to use a different link that has been sent to you over your email. Currently happening on track two right now is a session on publishing, and it's called Publishing Beyond Books Beyond Borders. I'd also like to let you know that if you have missed any of the sessions of the Long Weekend of Literature that have happened up until now, or you think you might miss something today, Belong will be archiving the festival on our YouTube channel, House of Belong, and also our mobile app, Another, spelled as UNOTHER. Another, which means the act of anothering the other, is a new mobile app that we've launched, and you can get insights from books, authors, and thought leaders on issues of diversity and inclusion on the app. We're happy to tell you that there is an exclusive 25% discount for attendees of the Long Weekend of Literature on the app currently, and it is valid till the end of the week. You can download the app on your phone and use the code LWEL01 to get a discount. Please note that the app runs on a freemium subscription model. You can find the download link and the coupon code pasted in the chat box of this Zoom webinar. I would quickly like to run you through the schedule for track one of day two of the festival before I hand it over to the panelist and the moderator of the first panel. The first panel we have right now is Talking Process, Narrating Inclusivity in Different Mediums with Tiffany Tavernier from France and Dániel Levente from Hungary. It will be moderated by Alina Gufran, who's an author from India. The second thing that we have lined up for today on track one is at 16:30, which is 4:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time, musical Chai Pakoda reading Adda with Swiss author Christoph Schneeberger, and the musician is Saskia Winkelmann. We promise that it will be a very exciting and different kind of reading session, and it will be moderated by Saranj Bisht of Belong. The next thing that we have is at 5:45 p.m. Indian Standard Time, which is Everything Europe Audience Quiz, which is the final round, and everybody can participate. We can accommodate all the attendees. And there's a chance to win exciting prizes there. At 7 p.m. Indian Standard Time is panel number 6, which is Performing Gender Across Cultures with X Schneeberger from Switzerland and Kareem Kubchandani from India. It will be moderated by Tejasvi Subramaniam of the Gezi family. At 8:30 p.m. is Indian Standard Time is panel 7 with Eva Baltazar, the author from Spain, in conversation with Ria Rodriguez Mukherjee, the author from India. They will be speaking about writing, mental health, and queerness. We conclude this particular track at 9:30 p.m. IST today. Without much further delay, I would like to now hand over the panel to Alina, who will introduce herself and the moderator and the panelists for today. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. One quick interruption, just a housekeeping announcement. This panel discussion will go on for an hour and a half, and Alina will speak to the authors first for a while. And we request everybody who's present, if you want to interact with the team or you want to convey something, please use the chat box at the bottom. However, if you want to ask the authors questions, which will be taken towards the end of the panel in the last half an hour to 20 minutes, please leave the questions in the Q&A box that you can see at the bottom of your screen. Alina and I can take the questions at that stage. Thank you so much. Over to you, Alina.
Thanks so much, Lasya. Welcome to another panel discussion at the Long Weekend of Literatures 2021 With the theme of belonging beyond borders, the long weekend is brought to you by 11 partnering European countries and their cultural institutions. I'm Alina, and I write about female identity and urban alienation. We have with us Tiffany Tavernier, a French novelist and screenwriter. Her first novel, Dans la nuit aussi le ciel, In the Night You Find the Sky. She looks back on her experience as a teenager in the darkest depths of Calcutta. Since then, she has never stopped writing or traveling. She now lives in Paris. Welcome, Tiffany.
Hello to everyone.
Hi. We also have with us Dániel Levente, Hungarian poet, writer, editor, and circus dramaturge. He's the author of 4 poetry collections and a book of short stories. He's also worked as a journalist. Since 2016, he has been working for the Capital Circus of Budapest as a playwright dramaturge. His latest book, The Eighth District of God, was an instant success in Hungary. He collects stories, fragments, and niches of the slum. Welcome, Dániel. In today's panel,
nice to meet you. Welcome for the invitation.
Hi. In today's panel discussion, Talking Process, Narrating Inclusivity in Different Mediums, we will discuss what the craft of writing for different medium entails and some other perennial existential questions that plague us as writers. So happy to have you here and completely privileged to be having this conversation. To start off with, I wanted to, just talk a little bit about how, and I guess this is directed a bit more towards Tiffany. And then obviously I would also love to know your perspective on this, Dániel, which is that, for me, writing a novel has always felt like a closer exercise in self-investigation. And each medium evokes a different feeling and consequently desire. So writing novels makes me feel less alone, as externalizing life's absurdities will help ascribe the random suffering some meaning. With the screen, there's a deeper awareness of the audience and of how the script might feel to them. With a novel, it just feels like it's me. I'm the only one trying to feel. So Tiffany and Dániel, what would you say that process looks like for you? How do you feel about the two different mediums, and why these specific mediums to begin with?
I understand clearly the question between scripts and novels.
Novel, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which one of us starts?
Tiffany, we want to take this
okay.
first. Yeah.
There are two.
Tiffany, please.
Okay, great, Daniel. So I'm starting. These are very different process of writing. I mean, writing a script and writing a novel is almost, I would say, two almost opposite processes in a very different ways. I mean, first of all, as you said, it's a real a personal investigation. The novel is a kind of inside voice that you are trying to develop at the maximum, to extend your own thought, you intimate even if it's a main character that is not you, all the game is to enter inside this character and to try to extend at the maximum his thoughts, his emotions. And it's like, I would say it's like an inside camera. You see, you are inside and you just stay inside. And all the novel will be his vision. It will be seen, the reality will be seen through him. I mean, through his language, through his feelings. And that would be the challenge of the novel, to follow and to be as close as possible to his from his language. Meanwhile, script, to write a script for movies, for instance, first of all, you are not the master. This is important. You don't control everything. I mean, there is a movie director at the end of the loop. So first of all, you are writing for someone and for another medium, which will it's a kind of first step towards the final. The final process. And secondly, very often you write. It depends of the format of a movie, but you write with a movie director or you write with another script writer. You have some movies where you are by yourself, but very often the movie director has to say something about it. So it's a dialogue.
Yeah.
It changed everything. And okay, now I'm entering inside the process of writing. A script is an outside camera. Script, when you have a character, you see him and you write him from outside, which is totally different. You see, the angle is totally different. You are you have to describe where, for instance, if he moves in a living room, and if he's thinking to his first love, you cannot write it like this. You cannot be inside. So you have to, it will be very elliptic, because you would say this, for instance, I would call him Mark. Mark is sitting in his living room. Okay, he's thinking of his first love.
Yeah.
That's all. I mean, the movie director and the comedian, the actor, will have to find a way to understand the audience that he is sad or happy, and that he's thinking, maybe touching a photo, touching a picture. You see, this is totally, in a novel, this will give 3-4 pages. So it's quite funny to write both, because it's like a balance. And sometimes it helps, because in a novel you can use tricks that you get from the script, and of course vice versa.
Yeah.
You see,
Absolutely.
okay, I'm sure I can go further, but
Yeah.
I hear Dániel about it.
Yeah, because Dániel, I particularly find your intersection extremely interesting, because you're a journalist and you're a novelist and you're a director and you're a poet, right? So when you're a journalist, it's in my experience considered a cardinal sin to embellish your stories. You're supposed to be a reporter first, but when you're a novelist, that's kind of your only job, especially as a poet and a novelist. So what does that intersection look like for you? Like, how do you differentiate between those two roles? What's that process?
Yes, there are many roles in my life, many roles or many techniques of writing. Some of these ways of writing are professions. Some others are some gloomy, artistic activities. As a journalist, and as a journalism, as a profession, I have learned it. How to write an article, how to make an interview with someone. From in my own way, or in schools of writing or journalism writing. And when I have a work, and when I have a task to write an article about a film, about a book, about an event, about a social problem, I have all the tools with a phone or mail or interview situations. And I have the spirit to make it. I have the curiosity to make it. Then when I have the whole raw material with the techniques, with the writing techniques, I just put them just like the Lego toys, or the tiny pieces of the Lego. I have the order to make the article in 600 characters. And when I reach the 580 characters, I know I have to finish this article, because there are no more space to write or to have other things put in the article. In another way, when I used to work as a dramaturg, especially for circus, it's not only just my work. It's show business. As Tiffany says, in film industry, there are directors, there are actors,
Yeah.
So many people. It's a group working process. We are in a creative team of more than a dozen people, from costumes to choreographers to the director. If I would like to say an example, when I worked with a Russian director, we didn't understand anything from each other. He only speaks Russian. I can't.
Yeah.
And when I wrote the texts or songs, I wrote in Hungarian because our audience is Hungarian or international. And I showed him all the text. And he asked me with the interpreter, is it good for the Hungarians? I said, yes, it's a really famous song. And just I mixed up all the text to the circus world. And with this, there were no misunderstanding between us, because there was no understanding between us. It worked.
Yeah.
And after the premiere show, he saw that it worked, because the Hungarian audience really liked it. And another point of view, I usually used to work with artists whose primary tool is their body in circus. Dancers, artists, jugglers, people with animal, without so many interesting in the words. And circus dramaturgy, just like Tiffany says in the film, I wrote the skeleton. In my opinion, it have to happen in the show. It have to happen in the case. The main character fell in love, but it's the role of an actor to play fell in love. If I give him, or the musicians give him a love song, it's easier for him. Without a love song, it's a really harder to him.
Right. Yeah.
When I'm writing fiction, it's something else, because there are no tools, there are no techniques. Yes, there are creative writing techniques, how to start a novel, how to start a short story, how to, etc. But the plasticity of writing, because when you are a writer, you don't have nothing, just as imaginary word in your mind. If you have an inspiration from the roads, from the slum, from realistic situations, but the work and all the work is in an imagination in your head. And when you write down, you don't have an audience, you don't have readers. You have just the idea of the readers. If I show you my texts, my short stories, you don't know the streets, you don't know the squares, you don't know the characters, you don't know nothing about Budapest.
Yeah.
But I have to write it down like you feel as a reader. You feel in the time of the reading, the whole situation, the whole atmosphere, everything. And this is the plasticity of writing. I have a blind reader. He's physically blind, and used to read my stories with some program, and the program read out loud him all the texts.
Yeah.
And he is living in the middle of the slum, some streets from me, and wrote me a letter that he is almost 40 years old. Wrote me a letter that thank you with the plasticity of your writings. The first time in my life, I see the street. I see the shops. I see the people.
Yeah.
Never before.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would jump. Because of course, when I'm hearing Dániel with all his different processes, if you want to get a little bit closer to the process of writing a novel and also a movie, but also work. You have. I'm writing also not journalism, but I'm writing also for kids, or I'm writing. I make people write, which is another type of writing. Yeah. And in different session in workshop, it's also a total different process of writing. But in movies, there's something very specific. When you write, most of the writing will be dialogues. You see, this is and the second thing is what I'm anyway responding to Dániel also, and it's also the very big difference is that you have a format.
Yes.
You have a pre-structured comment. And a movie has to be maximum 2 hours. But when you have to write it, the producers will ask you to not to go farther than 1 hour and a half, for instance. And you have to think about the genre. This is very technical. You have to answer. So the sequences. It depends on the movie director, but very often, it depends what you are writing an action movie or a very psychological movie. Yeah. But anyway, you have also the fact of the money. If you have a lot of money, okay, I can write a scene in the street with 5,000 people, laughing at what suddenly my main characters say. Instead, if I don't have money, I have to restrain myself and I have to stay in the house for the whole movie, and I have to, and it's at the same time, it's very frustrating, but it obliges you to find some tricks to be able to, you can also invent, you can paint, as one movie director made in France, with his script writer, he suddenly decided to say, okay, we cannot afford ourselves to be in Russia. We will put a very big set decoration, and the script writer tells him, okay, I will make my characters say in front of a camera, from now, we are in Russia. You see, this is amazing. This is very contemporary in a way. It obliges you to be totally, you are in a forest, says, I know you think I'm not in Russia, but from now I decide that I am in Russia. And this is great because it gives you suddenly a fantastic freedom. Okay. Yeah. In a novel, you are totally free. You can write 100,000 pages if you want. Maybe you won't be published, but at least you can write them. Okay. Absolutely. You can be anywhere. You can have as many characters you want. So you get a kind of in a way, terrible freedom. It's also dangerous to be asked, because many writers lose themselves. You start with a character, you find something interesting, and you just follow him, forgetting all the rest of the novels, all the rivers, the mainstream of a novel. So but it's also technique to write a novel. But everyone at that point, I would say that movies has a very, we'll say, general technique, because it implies real technique. Cameras, sound, set decoration, and money. Meanwhile, the inner writing demands a technique, but you see, between Dániel and I'm sure the technique will be different, but it has, you cannot write 300 pages like that. You can, if you're a genius, but most of us, I think I'm not a genius. So you have to, little by little, from one book to another, you have your own technique, and maybe also we can speak about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It made me think a lot about, and I want to pivot here a little bit to the idea of writing a novel, just the very idea of it. And this is my experience, probably because of, say, the generation I'm from and my location. I consume a lot of contemporary American novels, right? And in that, I find this movement that has come about of this sort of MFA style, which is extremely ambivalent, extremely internal monologue, extremely, focused, almost navel gazing on the urban millennial sort of problems and the experience, right? Where you're constantly dissecting, protagonist is constantly dissecting themselves. I've read a bit of Rossi, and I've read a bit of your novel as well, Dániel. And what I was interested to know is two parts. A, the lens is turned outwards constantly. The characters are identifying themselves through the outside world, which is not something I'm used to reading. So A, why is that? Why did you think it was important to kind of approach it like that? And B, what was that process like? Like, I know this is a trite question and people get asked this a lot, but if you're writing about something you do not know, for example, what does that look like for both of you?
Why I am writing about the people of that region or slum or district? Why I'm interested in?
Yes, for starters. And how did you arrive at that kind of process? How did you find out about them? How did you go about it? How did you inhabit the world that perhaps you are not a part of? Let's put it that way.
I, more than 10 years ago, I moved that district. I had some money to buy an own flat in the middle of the slum. It's a great start for living with all kind of criminals in a big European metropolis. Criminals and immigrants, all kind of, from China, from Africa, from Southern and Eastern Europe, and I did not want to write a book or two books and a play about them. But every day when I go to the streets, there were so many stories, so many dialogues. And I just started to write notes. It could be interesting. I can use it for somewhere else. In this time, I was editor-in-chief of a university press. As a profession, I made totally different. I read so much theoretical texts about law, about humanities, about everything, as an editor of a university press. And it was a totally different world. Totally, the neighbors of me are totally different people with totally different problems, which is a more realistic or a more problematic life. When you have a problem with a sentence, how to cleanse the sentence in one part of my life, or how to give some food to your children, which is a problem, a daily problem. And this, I don't know, the opposite of it is really, really interesting. It's a little cynical to say it's really interesting, but it's not really interesting. It's life, two sides of life. And I having so many friends there. I have so many discussions. I made so many deep interviews of 5 to 6 hours, lifetime interview. And I have so many stories and dialogues, funnies and sads. I started a Facebook page in Hungarian with the same name, the 8th District of God, and just put some of the funny stories on Facebook, just to make smile to my friends, make smile to the Facebook people. And after a year, after 1.5 years, some publishers wrote me that you have so many followers. don't you want a book? You already have poetry books, but these stories, the collection of these stories would be better than your poetry, would be more successful than your poetry. Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. And I collected all the stories, and the first version was 400 pages. And finally the book was more than 300 pages, and it worked. All the readers loved it, not just in Hungary, but I worked in Brazil, I worked in Portugal or in Madrid, Spain. And I showed them the stories, the translation, the rote translation, not a literary translation of the stories, or just a stand-up comedy in a beer house. I told them the stories, and they loved. Not the locals of Budapest, but in southern Brazil, right, or in Bangkok, also in Bangkok. And I thought that they have an universal meaning about humanity, about minorities, about different cultures in a small place. If you have a neighbor from China, another neighbor from South Africa, another neighbor from Serbia, you are just one community with the same problems, but totally different cultural contexts. In the same place. And this could be somehow more universal. I think I was a naive anthropologist. Never learned about, just read some books about anthropology. And the naivety of myself was, I don't have anything, don't have the techniques of a professional anthropologist. But I have the curiosity of an anthropologist or a sociologist. The curiosity is the braveness to hear the problems, or the braveness to make questions, not just for yourself because it's philosophy, but in a way you go to directly to a criminal or a war and ask her or ask him, how do you feel? What was your life? What is your story? And when they ask you, it begins a story. And if you have an ability or a talent of writing with the plasticity and etc., you can reach something universal, a universal meaning or a universal message of your writing. A funny anecdote at the end of this monologue of me. I have so many readers of illiterate people, right, or kind of people who usually never read a book, if they can read. I don't know. There was a journalist, a Tsigan journalist, made an interview with me and told me before the interview that his father has already read my book, and my book, his father was an unemployed road worker, and my book was the second book of his life. And I asked him, what was the first one? The Holy Bible? I don't know. No, not the Holy Bible. The first book that my father read in his life, told me this journalist, was in 1986, and it was The Life and Death of Bruce Lee.
That's right. I mean, when I'm hearing Dániel, there is something about us as novelists, you know. I used to compare when my daughter asked me, I mean, novelists, they are pirates. You see, they they are big stealers. I mean, when I passes my examination when I was 18, there's a big examination in France we call the baccalaureate. It's everybody, all the students, the pupils, they have to go through this examination to end their not boarding school, their the lycée, which is the grammar school. And my subject was. It's amazing because it answers to all of the subject I had. I had to write 5 or 6 pages about it. The line was a question asked to a very famous French writer was, "What is real in your stories?" And this writer answered, "Nothing. I have invented all." And I had to write about that. It was amazing. Of course, it's a lie. He has not invented everything. But in a way, yes, he has invented everything. I mean, we are very curious. So the first movement is, in fact, it's very important. I mean, this is not for all novelists, because you have also some novelists, it's another caste, but this caste of people we are moving towards. We are catching reality, and we are not afraid. And you said you were reading mostly American writers, but American writers from the beginning are so interested by, geography and outside land are so important. Sometimes they're so important that they are the main characters. In Colum McCarthy books, Faulkner's, Dos Passos, you get all these writers. The surrounding is almost a character. It tells everything about the psychology of the people. In this example Dániel gave, is curiosity and the fact that, in fact, we are very naive, all of us. I mean, as far as we don't get in touch with the people in jail, with the people in a slum, but also people living in a castle, we are naive. We don't know much, in fact, about all ourselves. In my books, in Roissy, I mean, it's the subject, I didn't know anything about it. And it's what gave me the desire to get into it. I mean, it was amazing, something I couldn't even imagine, that people disguise themselves as traveler. I mean, homeless people disguise themselves as traveler to live in a very big airport and to escape to the security. And they could live like this for, and they can live because they exist, these people. They can live like this for years without being trapped. Okay, when I heard that story and about this woman, I rush into this subject, and I get where I went. I went in Roissy, which is one of the biggest airports in France, but also in the world. And I start to do like Dániel did. I make a huge inquiry, huge one, because okay, how can you survive in an airport? And what do you know about the airport? So you have to also know the surface, all the official truth of the airport, but also all the undergrounds, which took me about 8 months. I stayed there 8 months, and it's also the fantastic part of being a writer is also this, it's to be able to cross borders that most of the people stop to cross and don't afford themselves to cross. It's also a work to get off. Writing, to my opinions, is one of the first objective of writing, or maybe the first necessity, is to get out of your habits. It's to cross borders, to cross frontiers, to extend yourself, to widen your gaze all the time. And in Roissy, I discovered amazing things. So the reality sometimes, and very often, I'm sure Dániel could tell the same thing, the reality is amazing. Live people, stories they tell you about, jobs, the language of the jobs. And also, for instance, in Roissy, you have one job. It's people who are, they have to scare the birds, because birds are very, very dangerous for the planes. Their main job is to scare the birds. Can you believe it? It's totally poetic. Now, if I am, this is the reality. I'm taking it, but then I transform it. I'm writing it, and at that point, in a way, I invent something. Because with all this puzzle material, I am giving it back and transform it into my reality. And this is, you see, this movement and this crisscross movement between the reality and my own language, the torsion. It's like pressing a fruit, you know. You have the fruit. This is the reality. This is the first job, but then you press it. And you make your own juice.
Absolutely. I mean, that's such a wonderful way of putting it, and it's so informative to just know about your process, because every writer has their own process. But I also know that every writer is like plagued with similar questions that they have to ask themselves when they're trying to write something. And I think my next question, and something that I personally have been thinking about, is growing up, you know, in the world of books, going from Dostoevsky to the books that we have today. You know, recently I was reading Weather by Jenny Offel, or Patricia Lockwood's No One Is Talking About This. And it's a tight, concise book of 150 pages written in like tweets, you know. So I am very intrigued to know. And, you know, Dániel, you'd mentioned earlier that you wrote something for Facebook, which then got published in a newspaper. So there is a constant interaction between different mediums. So as a writer, I'm constantly trying to evaluate my role over the grasp of language. Where does that come in? So how would you say your understanding of the language has evolved for you? Is it something that you actively think about, or is it more about the story for you, the story itself?
There are different sources of languages. There are, I don't know, there are no Hungarian language, but there are so many people use the Hungarian language in their way. It could be a true concept for every language. Your mother language is totally different from others. And when you reach somebody's language in a dialogue, or in a play of theater, or you reach the character. There was a question when I, after the Facebook posts, funny little tiny Facebook posts, there was the daily newspaper, and I have a series of series about the slum. It more than 1.5 years. It was more than 80 appearances in the newspaper, and I have to normalize the stories, because I have 300 to 3,000 to 3,500 characters in the printed newspaper. And I have rewrite all the stories with descriptions, with the whole context of the scene, the whole context of the dialogue, and normalize the language. You know, when you make a dialogue with a strange dialect of the participants, you have to choose I start again. As a writer, you have to choose to make a dialogue in dialect. You write it phonetically or write it grammatically.
Yeah.
And it could be funny, but when I hear phonetically the gypsy's voice, and I use so many syllabs or so many, or the swearings, etc. But
Yeah.
it is not necessary. Grammatically, you can resolve the dialect. It's a really, really strange thing that when you put in an unusual, put the words in unusual order, it's her or it's his language, and it's done. You don't have nothing phonetically, or when you have an actor or a character with speech error, you don't have to write all the words with speech error kind or with speech error way, but there is enough to write it down that he has or she has a speech error, and then all the appearances of the voice of him or her, the reader have. This is can be. I really like this concept, the suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
And or a willing suspension of disbelief. When it's a really old thing from Aristotle. When an artist says you, then the actor or then the character is blind as part of an audience, as a part of the reader. That is the reality. You don't have questions. Yeah, I see he is not, truly he is not blind. There's this suspension of disbelief. You have the roles of a director, roles of a writer.
Yeah.
And you have to read or have to see the play via this roles. And this is the one key of the experience of catharsis.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and so I had to normalize all the stories, the language of all the stories, then in a book once again, because in a newspaper from week to week, you have to finish the stories. You have to put a clicking in the end of the stories. And in a book, in a short story collection, you have other tones of voice, other tones of narrative. You don't have to repeat the situation, or you don't have to repeat the description of the characters. There are other rules. You have 300 pages of short stories in an area. And just in the beginning of the book, you have to describe the area or describe the characters. Then all the readers know everything. You have space to write the dialogues, or have to have a space to colorize the situation.
Yeah.
It's really strange to. I think I rewrite 4 or 5 times all the stories. Firstly to Facebook, then to a newspaper, then to a book, then to a stand-up show, then to a radio play. It's really funny to change. There were no stories, there were no literature of me with the sanctuary of the text, that every tiny commas are in this place. I don't have these strict rules of writing. This is a material, and this as a sculpture, it's or a living organization. I don't know, all the stories.
Yeah.
Or a space, a shapeshifter stories. It's really funny how it works. When I make poetry, it's something else. As a poet, I don't write. I'm a sculptor, and and I carve all the letters in marble. And when I finish a poem, it's a perfection, or a perfect artistical word, if you mean what I would like to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in a little bit philosophically, if we like the concept of every narrative work is an attempt to understand time and space.
Yeah.
If you change the medium, you change the understanding or change of time and space.
Absolutely.
The context of your text, it's a newspaper or a book or radio or Facebook, mix up all the qualities, all the or the properties or possibilities of your literary text.
Yeah.
And when you would like to understand or show the understanding of time and space of your narrative, all the changes of the mediums are a new challenge for you as a writer.
Absolutely, yeah. Tiffany, what do you feel?
Okay. Yeah, my feeling is the language has a move. The language is something very flexible and absolutely not passive. It's like a sponge to our reality. And it's very important for me in each of my novels to find and to listen to the language that is able to be the sponge of the reality of the story I'm telling about. But also the sponge, you see the sponge, I don't know if you understand this word in English, a sponge, yeah?
Yeah, sponge.
Yeah, okay, sponge. I was not sure suddenly. Sponge.
Mm-hmm.
And
SpongeBob.
Yeah, SpongeBob. The sponge is the language is very, very important. I mean, the language will. When you speak about classic novels, the language was very important, but we were in a very, strict society with rules, predefined rules, trajectories, and in a way, classic literature didn't have the freedom we have today. And people, they were born in one family and they would stay all their life in this family in the same level, social level. Okay, yeah. Actually, we are in a very fragmented society. We are confronted to a multiplicity of identity, of questioning about also, am I a woman? I am a man. I don't know. You don't know. Okay, the language for me has to be able to, and most of all in an airport, for instance, in my last novel, in this novel, the language has to be able to speak and to let emerge this reality of fragmentation and also this explosion of possibilities and also of reality, and also has to be fast because we are fast, and we are fast, but we are interrupted. We are very often cut into our movements because something happens there, something happens at, you have TV, you have screens. This was not something that was existing in a Flaubert or in a classical, very classical book. In an airport, you have screens. This is in a way, in an airport, it's fantastic because we are in a world that is a total concentrate of our world. You get all the language, all the identities, all the cultures. You get screens everywhere. You get sounds, announcement everywhere. So my writing had absolutely to to embrace this this tremendous and terrible, in a way, reality? How did I make it? I mean, it's I always, I mean, I didn't, you know, for instance, we actually, as a writer, you can stop your sentence in the middle of a sentence. I mean, you can stop it. You can put blank. You can suddenly make search a souvenir. Suddenly you have an audio, you get snatches everywhere that gets into the narrative.
Hyperstimulation.
You see? And this is not just a process. This has to tell you something. It has to, in a way, tell you something about the character, but also about our world. And, and then you have to invent somewhere this language. The invention is, in fact, this waving. You have also, for me, it's also invent some words. And sometimes in Roissy, you have blank page with one word used by the people of the airport with the definition. And then you go back to the narrative. And then you have something about her. She lost her memory. So she's more than any character in every novel. She has only for her to sustain herself to the surface. She has not the souvenir. She has not the backup. She has only the reality. All what she is feeling is about what's happening. And so what's happening? She is constantly hearing some bribes, snatches, reading some ads, you know, and this is a crisscrossing of feelings, and it's like a huge puzzle. And okay, this is very specific to this novel. See, the last one, I am inside a man who is discovering that his neighbor is a monster and it's his friend. So this will be totally different. But as it's a traumatic experience, my language will follow this traumatic experience and will be traumatic. And a traumatic language is not the same of just normal language. A traumatic language is suddenly totally, it's always and systematically crossed by thousands of thoughts, and it's absolutely not in order. And this will translate the position and the feeling of my character. So you see, it's another, it's a very good question.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating to hear you guys talk about this. And you know, this hyper stimulation that you talk of, right? And I understand, one, it's informed by the just trauma of your characters, but for me personally, I feel it's also informed because of the world we live in today, where we're extremely hyper connected but intensely dislocated in ourselves, you know. So as a writer, when I was a kid, my solace was books, and I used to read novels sitting in my room in New Delhi as a way to expand my consciousness. You know, I could be in Paris, I could be in Budapest with like the turn of a page, right? But now, as I just want to talk about the industry a little bit. Barely 8 million people read in English, for example, right? In India, the largest category of books that sell is self-help books. It's not fiction. Genre writing makes more money, these are statistics, right, than literary fiction. So for you as novelists, this is a tough question. What does the future of writing look like for you personally and as a part of your respective industries?
Dániel, do you want to answer?
Yes, of course. Fiction writing is I really like. When I was a small kid, I really liked writing. It's a passion for me. And if I do not have writers, I will continue the writing because it's good for me. It's good for my soul, good for my body. My fictions are, my written fictions are something, I don't know, it's not a therapy, but I can't live without fiction writing or without my imaginary words, writing my imaginary words or collect the stories. It's just like the breathing or the eating and drinking.
Yeah.
I'm a kind of this. I'm a time of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sorry for the saying, but shit happens.
Yeah.
Yes. The other way. Yes, this self-helping books. Really like that genre of self-helping books, and there are so many books about why do we read self-helping books without churches, without religion, without gods. We have to, without psychologists or the new world order of psychologists, new world order of self-helping philosophies, new world order of instant truth, how to make your life better or how to make your living and every day better. Why we need this, I don't know, but I don't need them. But I know that we have in the circus, we have more than 500,000 people as audience in a year.
Wow.
And it's especially kids and grandparents.
Yeah.
The 70% of our audience are little kids with their grandparents. Yes, and you have a responsibility.
Yeah.
Because they want a show, because they want the moments of catharsis.
Yeah.
But as a dramaturg, if you put a positive or a life-helping message in the show or in an act, you reach more than 500,000 people with the message.
Yeah.
And these messages, not easy messages, just smile in the world, smile to other. Next Saturday, we have a new show, a Christmas show. And what's the message of Christmas? Yes, we have the circus genres, the jugglers, the acrobats, the flyers, the Chinese road acts, etc., etc. But before Christmas, and Christmas not just a Christian thing in Europe, but the celebration of love each other.
Yeah.
If the message of the Christmas, not the Black Friday and the shopping thing, or not an ancient Christian thing, which have this own tradition, and there are so many Christian, so many people with Christian, but for a Jew or for an atheist, if it could be the message of the celebration of love each other, I think it's a good message.
Yeah.
And it's my responsibility to give them the message in an authentic way.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you feel, Tiffany?
Well, when you ask the question about our future, I mean, of course, it's. I have to answer the question by two questions, because what is writing? Writing, I mean, of course, novels demands a lot of time. And actually, we are in a world where people and young people, I mean, not maybe kids, but teenagers and young people, they don't take time, they move, everybody moves, everybody rushes. So, I mean, a novel, it's a total antinomy. And in fact, less and less people read novels. It doesn't mean that novels are not important, but people don't take the time, and people don't. Maybe they don't have, or they don't take. I don't know. Maybe they but I'm not very afraid because novel is absolutely fascinating, but I mean, there's so many different way of writing, and writing, if I have to escape from the novel, there's another way. I'm sorry, I'm hearing something.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry, but we would just have to ask Eva and Nurse who have joined here to go to the other track for their session right now. I'm so sorry, but like we have that session live right now.
Okay.
right.
So Eva and Nurse, if you can hear me, please we've sent the link for the other track on the chat. Please join that. Thank you. Continue the conversation, Tiffany and Daniel. I'm so sorry for the disturbance.
Okay. So no, it's just that in a way, yes. I mean, novels are very recent. It's only since 300 years maximum that we are writing novels. So I mean, I think novels will go and will espouse the form of what is the need. The need is there. The desire is here, and it will take the form. And maybe you won't call it anymore a novel, but something else. It doesn't matter. It will speak about what Dániel says. It will translate something, which this will never change.
Yeah.
You see,
It
the
has to be.
desire and the need of introspection. This is absolutely essential. The form that will become the next material, the next medium to tomorrow, I don't know, but since we as far as we can still write novels, I think Dániel and I will do it, because it's something like a very, very big experience.
Yeah, I mean, more power to that. It's fascinating for me because it does make me think a lot about like the dissemination of information, right? And in the world that we live in, that's become completely democratic. Anybody can get any information, and so much of our culture, I feel now, the zeitgeist has changed and is influenced by just the social media or the dark web or e-commerce, right? So and it's exactly what you said, Tiffany. Like, I'm very fascinated to see in what form are novels going to be consumed in the future, because they will exist. The stories will exist. Stories will never go out of fashion, right? So thank you so much. That was just such a great conversation. We don't have too much time, so I want to switch over to the audience questions. And we've got some really interesting questions. So I'm going to start with this one. Thank you so much for such an insightful session. The question is about handling the theme of inclusivity as a writer who has to cover controversial topics. So how do you write or deal with such topics without hurting the sentiments of the reader? That's the question for both of you. Anybody would like to take this?
Yeah.
Without hurting the sentiments of the reader?
Yeah.
You have to hurt it.
Yes, I have. You have to hurt that.
Yeah, you have
because if you hurt the sentiments, this will be a discussion.
Exactly.
I make them thinking, or make them in moral questions, or I use a really, really harsh language, the language of the slum.
Exactly.
And I had so many readers from I don't know, normal life or civil life, or without any experience of that kind of living. And they wrote me that I use politically not correct words. And I use make politically not correct situation. And I answered them, not me, the life of my characters. I just, as a writer, I just write it down and show you. And if somebody uses a word in a sentence in real life, tell to in a, I don't know, in a pub situation, or in a brawl, fighting each other on the street, and told one to other with you rotten gypsy, tarara, tarara, tarara. It's not my words. I
Yeah.
can in a dialogue, I can't make politically correct and smooth language.
Yeah.
Because it's not authentic and not realistic.
Yeah.
And it's a false image of the world.
Absolutely. You're sanitizing it. And why would you do that?
Yes.
Because it doesn't-
I want to harsh them,
Yeah.
harsh the feelings.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, if we are writers, not to be conform. I mean,
Yeah.
the first, I mean, can you believe it? So it's the conformity actually is to be absolutely everywhere aware of inclusivity, of I mean, this is, of course, we are aware of it. And all this, this matter let emerge some fantastic question. But as writers, I mean, if you're a good writer, I mean, you don't, you have some very bad characters. You have some racist one. You have to put inside a novel people who are absolutely disgusting. You
Yeah.
have, I've got in my last novel somebody who
Mhm.
killed and raped little girls, you know, and you have to be, I mean, this is, unfortunately, this is what also the world is made of. And you just
Exactly.
cannot just write something smooth and absolutely perfect and conform to all what the people would like to, you know, to please the black people, to please the yellow people, to please the white people, to please, you know, this is absolutely impossible. We are not like to please people. I mean, all the biggest novelists in the world never thought about and never thought about pleasing anyone. So if in Afghanistan a girl has to write, I mean, she will not write pleasing the Taliban's people. And I think the most important is to be without any concession with our characters, but with ourselves too. Because in fact, it could be a trap to say, oh no, I'm not going to put that because, you know, people will won't like it. This would be so dangerous. And it's happening actually.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, what is it? The witches, it's like, you know, coming back to the Middle Age. I mean, it's very strange. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes,
hyper connection, and in a way, it's the hyper trials, you know, hyper connection. It could normally should really open to all the complexity of life, and people with this hyper connection, they demand something totally too simple, too, you know, they don't want anymore to be confronted to something complex, to the gray color. And I mean, humanity is gray. It's not, you know, totally black, totally white. I don't think so.
You know, this reminds
and why want harsh the feelings? Because I want the audio, want the readers, I want them to take a stand, look in a mirror, or have an opinion, be angry or be in love with the characters, but not, or be angry, but not be angry with me, the writer, but be angry with the world itself.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, this is so strange. I mean, it's also so interesting that you're saying this, because as writers of color, let's put it that way. Let's say you're a writer who comes from the Indian diaspora or Africa or whatever, you're expected to only write about your identity. Like, you as a human being could capture this heterogeneous, diverse Indian or African experience. And, you know, this reminds me of this thing I read about a brilliant novelist who wrote a book called My Sister, the Serial Killer. Okay, I think her name is, And she was like, you know, she's Nigerian. And she was like, okay, I was asked to write about the Nigerian experience. I couldn't do it. I was depressed. She's 32. She's like, I'm going to write about a woman who kills men because she had a bad day. And it's a great novel. It's a great, fun story. And so it works both ways. It's like either way, you're backed into a corner. So I completely understand absolutely as a writer where you're coming from, that writing is the space we have to go to the darkness, you know, to really tap into the darkness and be able to show that to people. So thank you so much for that answer. I wanted to kind of move to the next question. I think there's one more question, two more questions actually. Okay, so this is, how do you write about people's dialects and the ways they talk without mocking it? Is it a fine line that you have to be careful with? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's the most important task as a fiction writer, because the authenticity of the character is the language of the character.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I used to send my books or my stories so many friends, not writers, not people from humanities, but to my hairdresser, or show the text to my mother, or show the text a guy, a really funny guy who I used to walk with every morning. We used to walk in the roads with our dogs. And he works in the construction, for construction, and just show them the stories. It is work, it is authentic, the language.
Yeah.
And if they say, yes, it's okay, or yes, this word is so from the slang of the 80s, I changed the word because that was a mistake of me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It's very important, even in movies. Even in movies, this is the same for movies or novels, because you can. I mean, there's something totally great when you found a dialect or in a language, because there's these dialects or these slangs. They are absolutely amazing. And we get a slang in French. You have the old slang, but you have nowadays you have a cyber slang. Okay, so the first step is to be just wow. You get this wow effect, but you have to be careful not using it, because in fact this is something new, and you adopt it just disconnected from its reality. So you have to keep it totally connected to what this language belongs, to what word this language belongs, and that is a process of respect, and also of authenticity, has said Dániel, and of this is an exigence. It really has. When you read novels, and you can feel it very, very, very fast. If the novelist didn't work and didn't do it well, didn't do it, even in movies, when you see suddenly, because you have dialects from people from the slum, but you have dialects in between, also people from different provinces. Even in France, we have different countries in a way in one country, but also dialects in jobs. Yeah, you hear police people, and you say, no, that guy didn't his job well. It doesn't sound correct. It's totally false. You have to catch the good music everywhere. The good psychological music, the good language music, the good dialect music. This is the job, and it's a huge job.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm just kind of going through the questions. Okay, so my next question is, sometimes while translating, we lose the essence of the feelings, memories, and authenticity from the original work of what the author wants to communicate. So how can we mitigate those risks? I'm not sure who we refers to here, but yeah.
That's you have to pay a very good the first way to avoid that kind of problem is to get enough money, and to have somebody who has enough money to pay a very good translator. And in this, it's like a good writer.
Yeah.
You see, this
absolutely.
is you have two categories. And
Yes.
you can, if you are translated in both language and you know both language, you can read, of course,
Exactly.
language in
Yeah.
which you are translated and corrected. But the main problem will come from the translator, and you have bad translators and you have very good ones. And in my where I am edited, published, my publisher got fantastic ones, so I don't have problems in that.
Yeah.
And without harshing the feelings of literary translators, we used to say there are no good or bad translations, but there are good or bad books in the language. If you read my book in English, you don't read the translation, you read the story. And if it is in a bad translation, stylistical and grammatical bad translation, you just read a bad book.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
I really hate when I was a teenager and I really liked the sci-fi and fantasy books. And we have in Hungarians, just I don't know, Frank Herbert's Dune and the Star Wars stories, the really bad translations, in a really bad translation. And these were really so sadly bad books. And firstly, I with a dictionary, I wanted to read in original because I hate the language, the Hungarian language of the books. And I did not understand how they are so successful and how they get the Hugo and Nebula Prize for that shitty text or shitty style and these were bad books for me.
Yeah. I mean, for me, translation is its own craft. You know, it's sort of in tandem with writing. And like you rightly said, a good translation can elevate the book and a bad translation can destroy it. Pretty much. Yeah.
And a good translation has to fit to the music of the book, the rhythm of the book. I mean, in Rossi, I translated myself the very famous Daffodils poem, Wordsworth poem. And I mean, why? Because I didn't find any translation. It was amazing. I was amazed. So I decided to translate it by myself. And why? Because I didn't find back the music. I didn't find my... the music of a poem, the balance of a poem is so important. And it was very, scholar, Google translation stuff, which is totally amazing. I mean, you have to be very inventive when you're a translator. Sometimes you have to recompose the sentence, and it's a real job. You have genius.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. We're almost about to run out of time, so I want to ask this one question, which I think would benefit all of us. Respectively, what kind of advice would you give someone who is an aspiring writer and is trying to adapt their work across mediums? This is a selfish question because I write for the screen and a novel, so this will really help me more than,
When I was a creative writing teacher at university for 10 years, almost a decade, I was teaching creative writing, the university courses, and I always had this question to the young, talented boys and girls: if you want to write, you have to feel every new work begins with a blank and white sheet. The first rule. And the second one is not a rule, it's a question: how to get the writing process, all of it. And I told this question earlier to you, and just repeat as the final message of my presentation. That's if you would like to be a writer, you have the task how to create a character who is smarter than you.
Absolutely.
If you can, you will be a good writer, a good one. Thank you.
No pressure. Thanks so much, Daniel. Tiffany?
Well, it's I would, my first advice, I got 2 or 3 advices. My first one would be, okay, to be a writer is almost a state of being. You know, if you're a real writer, you, in a way, you don't ask yourself a question. You go through. That's the first answer, because, you know, you have so many people who come, says, I want to be a writer. I mean, no, you don't want to be a writer. You're a writer. You feel you're writers, like to be a musician, like to be a poet. You don't wait the answer from the outside. The second is, are you ready to really work hard?
Yeah.
Because it's a huge, you know, people think it's just, you know, I'm writing my little story. The third advice would be, no, you get a good story, but it's not enough. A good story, it's fantastic and it's very important. But you have a language, and the story has to carry some questionings. And so you have to pick up one, because you have so many good stories, but you have to pick up the good story. The good story that is telling something about our world, that is opening the questionment. It's not only the good story, you know, of my grandmother, of a sister. It's something that open, that to my feeling, he has to open questions. He has to disturb the people who read the book. To be, it's what we told before. He has to really disturb his and he has to oblige him to be confronted to some dark sides of the existence, or maybe also magnificence of existence. But the thing is, the story has to, and this is also one of my main advice, because so many writers, I mean pre-writers or before being writers, we think it's just a story. But it's not only the story, you see. Dániel told us about the enormous job about, you know, getting the stories and then put them together and then found a way to tell them and to question the world. And it's the same for me. And so there's one story. And this is to pick up the, you know, this is the movement. And it's what I would say, a good story is not enough. You also has to, you have the poetry, you have the vision, vision. And the vision is something that you get from inside, from your own experience.
Absolutely. And I, just to add to that, I also feel there has to be a searing honesty about your work, or the approach to it, the underlaid with a kind of intrinsic honesty of where this could go and what you're talking about. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I hope this was nice for you. It was so enlightening for me. Just had a great time. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Dániel. I'm going to pass this on to Yoshita.
Hello. Hi.
Thank you,
Alina, Tiffany, and Dániel, for such a great conversation. And thank you, Alina Francis, de Delhi, the French Institute in India, for bringing in Tiffany for this festival, and List Institute, Hungarian Cultural Center, Delhi, for bringing in Dániel.